The first Pikmin game came out for the Nintendo GameCube on October 26, 2001. It was created by Shigeru Miyamoto, creative mind behind such classic Nintendo series as Super Mario, The Legend of Zelda, and Star Fox. Bringing a casual twist to the strategic genre and a soft environmental design make the series appeal to younger and more inexperienced players, but still provide veteran players with a challenging strategic puzzle. With 2 entries on the GameCube, one long-awaited sequel on the Wii U, and another installment near completion, this series has become a cult classic and a staple to any Nintendo library. So what's so great about it? Well, let's start with digging into the first entry in this series. Our first category to look at, story. Spoiler-free, just like we like it here. The story of Pikmin 1 is that you're Captain Olimar, who has crash-landed on an alien planet and must enlist the help of native creatures, the Pikmin, to help you reconstruct your ship and get off-world before your life support gives up in 30 days. The opening cutscene and first moments of gameplay jump straight to the point with the same sense of urgency that Olimar must be feeling. The story is very cut and dry beyond that. In fact, that's pretty much it. Other than some secondary characters being mentioned and a tiny subplot about what the Pikmin are and how they live. The game capitalizes on the sense of solidarity by giving no actual dialogue, using only Olimar's journals to guide you through the story, and even then, those entries are only once a day, and not always relevant to the story as a whole. By the end of the game, depending on how successful or unsuccessful you were in collecting ship parts, there are 3 possible endings, which, while they will make you feel strongly for how Olimar's story of Pikmin 1 ends in one way or another, they are not all that varied. But to be fair, you are presented with the ultimate outcomes at the very beginning of the game. Either Olimar will repair his ship, or his life support will give up in 30 days. What either of those outcomes means, well, you'll have to experience that for yourselves. With all of this in mind, we give this game's story elements a 7 out of 10. The game presents a unique premise, but not a deep one. Luckily, this isn't what the game is striving for, but it still leaves some development to be desired. For a game developed during the end of the Nintendo 64's lifespan for their next generation console, this game is very clean. However, it doesn't always feel precise. The Pikmin Ai has plenty of quirks. The Pikmin frequently get stuck around corners, break away from Olimar, picking up random objects and getting themselves into trouble that could be detrimental. However, a lot of these issues are minor and easily forgiven considering how early this game was in the GameCube's run, and considering the fact that they were successfully rendering the movement and control of upwards of 100 characters on screen at a time. But quirks aside, how about the gameplay and compatibility with the player? This game controls very smoothly, with the extra use of the C-stick for added maneuverability. The exploratory arc of the game is well presented using specific available camera angles to display what is just out of reach and what the player will be working towards in the future. The creatures are ruthless, deceiving, and unforgiving, teaching the player to tread carefully with their small army. With how much this game teaches you about how to play itself, we're giving the gameplay an 8 out of 10. The sense of accomplishment at the end of each day and the feeling of exploration go hand in hand to provide a great journey through the gameplay of this title. This game presents quite an interesting blend when it comes to its experience. In fact, it's kind of hard to tell who this game's audience is. On one hand, the game has a cheery atmosphere, a casual feel, and even fail-safes in the event of disaster. It quickly pulls you into the story and makes you as uncomfortable as Olimar on this alien world, having to learn your way around on your own. All of this would seem to point towards this game's audience being young or casual players, possibly new to strategy games altogether. On the other hand, this game, while presented casually, requires meticulous planning and strategy to beat in one playthrough. The enemies and daily timer are relentless and merciless, hindering your progress substantially at even the smallest mistakes. With everything so up in the air, we're scoring the user experience with a 6 out of 10. Sure, the game is casual in feel and even in comparison to most puzzle and strategy-based games, but under its cute exterior is a tricky, usually unforgiving game. Now, this is by no means a negative style of experience in its own accord. But the bad thing is, new players could easily be lulled into a false sense of security with aspects such as no timer on the first day, and no obvious urgency in the gameplay itself. If a player is enjoying the world and taking their time, it's very easy to let the days slip by so quickly that you reach a remaining parts to remaining days ratio that makes the game literally unbeatable, and this can happen as early as halfway through the game. This game is a terrific experience for well-versed players, but it is a trap for new players looking for a relaxing casual experience. The aesthetics are where this game truly shines. In fact, it's one of the greatest aspects of the entire series. Despite the game being 15 years old, it still looks phenomenal. The light music and soft colors give way to a natural sensation. The whimsical music gets stuck in your head and has that classic Nintendo feature of changing on a dime to reflect conflict. The toy feel of Olimar's ship, and even the astronaut himself, give a feeling of fun, as if everything's make-believe, but the world around you still feels so real and fleshed out. I mean, the Pikmin are even cute when they trip. Not as cute when they're dying, but still, these little creatures will go down in gaming history as some of the most adorable characters ever. Due to all of this evidence, we're giving the aesthetic of this game a 10 out of 10. That's right, we're starting off with a game with a perfect score in one of the categories. We tried looking for any reason to knock this game down to at least a 9, but we just couldn't find anything. It has aged so well that even though there have been vast improvements to graphics and game quality, this installment still holds its own. It's enjoyable to look at, the music is memorable, and enemies are as daunting as they are unique. So yes, this game gets a maximum score in aesthetics. But don't worry, it's not all good for Pikmin. On to our last category, value. In some ways, this game feels like a demo, or a test run. While it's all very unique and inventive in its gameplay and presentation, there's altogether not much to it. According to HowLongToBeat.com, this game takes on average about 8.5 hours to beat the story, and 9 hours to 100% complete. It also took us only 7.5 hours to 100% this game. After completing the main story, supposing you do manage to complete it on your first try, then you've pretty much seen everything there is to see. There is an unlockable challenge mode, but unlike the later installments, these challenges are not new puzzles and new caves. It's simply a race against time to see how many Pikmin you can breed in a single day in any of the 5 levels of the game. So aside from playing the game again or trying to beat your previous number of days left, that's all there is in terms of replayability. Now, our value category doesn't consist of just replayability, but also how much the experience of playing this game is worth. That's where the tide turns in its favor. This game has gone down in history as a must-have GameCube cult classic. It's tricky to come across anywhere other than online retailers, and is generally $20 to $30 for a used GameCube copy. And let me say that it's entirely worth that price. This is a must-play game for all forms of gamers, and due to that, we're giving the value of this game a weak 6 out of 10. While it is unique and a fun experience in the world of gaming, we can guarantee that after completing it, this game will go right back to the shelf for the foreseeable future. At the end of this video, we'll tally up all the scores and make some comparisons, but first, we have another game to look at in the series. On to Pikmin 2. Released in Japan in April of 2004, Pikmin 2 expanded very successfully on the world that its predecessor had established. If the first Pikmin game were a demo, Pikmin 2 would be the full release. Nintendo made vast improvements to the Pikmin universe without completely flipping the table on the fans. Pikmin 2 returns with another straightforward plot. As Captain Olimar returns to his home planet of Hakatit, he is greeted by a depressing state of affairs as the company he works for has gone bankrupt. Realizing the potential of the many treasures on the Pikmin homeworld, Olimar returns with blundering delivery boy Louie to save his company. And that's it. Once again, a simplistic story sets the scene. The story is progressed by the dialogue of the wisecracking company ship, which has replaced Olimar's beloved SS Dolphin. After the debt of 10,000 Pokos has been repaid and the main storyline has been completed, a secondary storyline begins, but in the interest of spoilers and surprises, we won't discuss that here. This simple, efficient story earns a score of 5 out of 10. On one hand, the story is a lackluster and almost shoehorned reason for Olimar to return to the Pikmin planet. But on the other hand, in a game about adventuring at your own pace and discovering the majesty of the world around you, is an award-winning script really necessary? Honestly, in terms of gameplay, not much has changed between these two titles. I mean, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. However, everything has been noticeably cleaned up. The AI is smarter, the controls are tighter, and everything just feels smoother. Even while multitasking between two characters in the more complicated system, everything just works. Pathfinding works great, and getting stuck on walls and corners is all but eliminated. The two-character system helps cut down on the workload within the time-constrained days and provides a much better rhythm in accomplishing your goals. Combat is slightly more complicated with more varied enemies with different weak points and the use of concussive purple Pikmin and poisonous white Pikmin. Exploration has had a massive overhaul in this sequel, being much more rewarding for the player to wander into new areas and take their time. The removal of time in caves is greatly needed and allows the player to learn every aspect of these very open and intricate dungeons. With these minor yet crucial improvements, the gameplay of Pikmin 2 receives a score of 9 out of 10. Sure, they removed the time limit of days, but with so much to do, each individual day has a rushed feeling, as though you can never finish everything you want in time. And in an effort to make some caves more intimidating, traps were added that only trigger at certain precise spots or with a certain amount of Pikmin with you, leaving you unable to outthink them in an effort to protect your team. Though these points could easily be argued against, as sometimes you're simply at the hands of nature. Luckily, this game caters to new players of the franchise without being condescendingly hand-holding. Right off the bat, the game's menu feels much more fleshed out, giving an idea of the world full of mystical creatures that you will soon discover. The first day is much more straightforward, leading you through all the steps necessary to discover the functions of the game for yourself. The inclusion of an always-present money counter gives the player an instant sense of success and gratification, giving that push to continue collecting more treasure. Every milestone of 10% closer to your goal is celebrated with triumphant music and on-screen notifications. Each Pikmin type has obvious differences that indicate their respective abilities, such as the weight of the purple Pikmin and the electrical resistance of yellow Pikmin, something that was occasionally an issue in the first game. Areas within the game are reminiscent yet refreshing, bringing new twists to old ideas. Being so tidied up from the first game, the user experience of Pikmin 2 receives a 10 out of 10. This sequel sticks to its roots in providing a cozy experience, allowing the player to have full control of their progression and learning speed, allowing as enjoyable a time as possible. While delivering a great experience for returning players, new players will have no problem learning the ropes and enjoying the world at their own pace. Though it kept the same basic style as the first game, Pikmin 2 made things feel much more fresh. The score feels very lavish with the use of more varied instruments and dynamics. Cave music is ominous yet relaxing, and boss music is epic and exciting. The use of sounds, such as the buried treasure indicator and the notification when all treasures in an area have been found, create another level of involvement and subtle guidance. The world feels as lush as ever, and the addition of many more large creatures and bosses are reminiscent of David and Goliath, feeding your sense of power and cunning. With such improvements to a game whose predecessor already received a perfect score, it's hard for this game to receive an aesthetic score of anything less than 10 as well. In Pikmin 2, it really is the little things that matter. The small yet important improvements and changes made to the game make it feel as if this is what was intended to come out of the Pikmin series. The addition of the new battle mode provides hours of two-player entertainment, and a greatly expanded challenge mode substantially increases the longevity of one-player and two-player game time. HowLongToBeat.com states that the main story of Pikmin 2 takes about 12.5 hours to beat, but I can tell you firsthand that you can spend plenty more time in it, as evident of my childhood save file of over 66 hours in single player alone. And another thing, in the interest of protection from spoilers, this video is only sharing footage and discussion of the main storyline, which is only 10,000 of the over 26,000 Pokos worth of treasure, and only 3 of the 4 locations. There's almost 2/3 more of the game than we are even discussing. With so much game time available to give the greatest experience possible, the value of Pikmin 2 receives an 8 out of 10. With countless hours of multiplayer, competitive, and cooperative play, on top of the in-depth single-player story mode, this game is well worth its price. The long-awaited sequel of the first 2 Pikmin games was finally released on the Wii U worldwide in summer of 2013. Though originally slated for release on the Wii console several years earlier, Miyamoto stated that he wanted to utilize the upcoming Wii U's high-definition graphics and screen-bearing controller. And aren't we glad Nintendo wanted to fulfill their ultimate vision? In typical Pikmin fashion, this game starts off with a cutscene full of space travel and disaster, but also a little bit of hope. We were introduced very briefly to 3 new characters, Alf, Brittany, and Charlie, who you meet as you progress through the first few days of the game. The mission of these Kopites is to secure a source of fruit to return to their planet to save their civilization from the brink of famine. However, as expected, something goes wrong and the characters are separated from the ship as well as each other. As the player reunites the crew of the SS Drake, they will discover the extremely varied world of Pikmin 3 and locations unlike anything witnessed in the earlier games. Possibly the story's greatest aspect is how self-contained it is. There is no need for new players to have played either of the earlier games to understand and enjoy the main storyline. However, there is a secondary storyline full of references and jokes for veteran players of the franchise, though it is full of exciting twists, so we don't want to spoil it here. With these 2 separately contained experiences of the storyline, we're giving Pikmin 3's story a score of 7 out of 10. The player quickly understands the urgency of the characters and feels the push to progress through the story's conclusion. However, the main storyline and conflict go tit for tat with Pikmin 2. Group is running out of a resource, send crew to fix problem, crew gets separated, meets Pikmin, reunites, and begins the search for their treasure. New players will see nothing wrong with it. Older players, however, will recognize that this is simply Pikmin 2 with 3 new characters looking for different items. Sometimes. That being said, the internal references and side story are enough to give returning players something to be excited about. There has always been a noticeable separation in the natural delivery of the games in the Pikmin universe and the manual field of control, which reminds you that you are playing a game. In Pikmin 3, that gap has shrunk to the smallest it has ever been. The gameplay actually feels like it is part of the world, rather than a means of activating it. Everything in this game has a feeling of evolution, not only in the world but within the Pikmin and controls as well. The walls of the world feel very real, letting you know your boundaries without feeling like map edges and invisible walls. The use of the Wii U gamepad to represent the in-game Kopad is extremely helpful with multitasking and general planning. The controls and features of the game are as easy to pick up on as always, until controlling 3 separate characters feels like second nature. With every iteration of this series, small steps have been made towards making the gameplay as natural as visuals. Pikmin 3 has earned a strong score of 9 out of 10 in the field of gameplay. One of the only negative aspects of the gameplay changing over time is the removal of the C-stick control. However, the use of the charge mechanic, lock-on, and the ever-improving AI and pathfinding quickly make you forget what you're missing. With 3 characters to control and larger maps than ever, it would be easy for players to be overwhelmed while trying to take everything in. However, Nintendo made sure that anyone can play this game, and your gaming skill simply factors into how smoothly and quickly you are able to accomplish something, but not necessarily how well you can do it, giving everyone an opportunity to experience the same game in different ways. Starting out with a full animated and narrated cutscene to open the game, players are given as grand an experience as possible, right from the start. The use of the Wii U gamepad as the Kopad communication device is both immersive and enjoyable. The maps are so much more complicated that they don't grow stale because you've never fully become used to them. But the complexity isn't an issue because you have a map at all times, so it's impossible to get lost. Additional weather changes and matching music keep the game from feeling repetitive. The user experience of Pikmin 3 reaches a score of 10 out of 10. The adaptability to different players' skill levels and play styles is much stronger than either of the previous titles in the series. Finally, we have been delivered a Pikmin game with modern graphics. This is the world that we were always meant to see. Right from the title screen, we are shown the beauty that awaits us. Everything looks so real and natural, as if it was actually grown within the game. In contrast, the world of the Kopai characters feels much more digital, including the heads-up display and many parts of the soundtrack. But the world of PNF 404 feels like it has finally reached its pinnacle of reality. Destruction is smoother, water is stunning, weather gives everything a lively shine, as if the whole planet itself is a living organism. Even the addition we never knew was necessary, these sexy creature death poofs. That's right, sexy death poofs. And probably one of the most wonderful features of all, the ability to experience the world in first person through the use of the Kopad camera. With all of these examples, it wouldn't surprise you by now that this iteration also receives a 10 in aesthetics. Now, at this point, you may be wondering how we could be so thoughtless in our analysis that we somehow managed to give this and this both the same score in aesthetics. Well, the answer is simple. The score lies in their similarities. The visuals of Pikmin 3 are just modern, updated versions of the visuals of Pikmin 1, which, as a reminder, came out in 2001, amidst an era of chunky graphics and the gaming industry's puberty towards high definition. But these games remain smoother than their competitors, even on the brand new Nintendo GameCube. Honestly, while we were playing through the first game, we couldn't think of how it could look any better, aside from maybe being more crisp. But the Pikmin series continued to grow with the times and remained on the peak of its performance, advancing on visual aspects we never anticipated wanting. Due to the re-embraced time limit surrounding the finite amount of fruit you can collect, you are no longer able to spend as long as you want exploring the Pikmin planet as you could in Pikmin 2. However, you are still given plenty of cushion in your time limit, allowing you to enjoy the pace of the game without rushing. The Bingo Battle game mode is a great recall to the battle mode of Pikmin 2. Players are now able to use all 7 types of known Pikmin, as well as control 2 separate captains for each player, allowing for more complicated competitive play. However, the mission mode feels like a bit of a step back. This mode is more similar to the challenge mode of the first Pikmin game rather than Pikmin 2. There are fewer maps and less to do, unless you plan on buying the 3 DLC packs. For shame, Nintendo. Not even the Pikmin are safe from DLC limitations. Taking steps in any direction, forward or backward into consideration, Pikmin 3 receives a value score of 7 out of 10. As with all Pikmin games, there is little reason to play the single-player story over again after completion, other than racing yourself or other players' stats for a better score. However, one time through will deliver one of the greatest gaming experiences modern Nintendo has to offer, and if you plan on playing with a friend, the entertainment can last indefinitely. Well, here we are with our final scores. Pikmin 1 has a cumulative score of 7, Pikmin 2 lands with an 8, and Pikmin 3 with a 9, all 3 averaging out to an 8. Scores for each category across the series end up with a 6 in story, 9 in gameplay, 9 in user experience, 10 in aesthetics, and 7 in value. Objectively, Pikmin 3 comes out on top with the highest overall score of all 3 games. The best looking game by far and a great pickup for younger players, it would be easy for us to declare that this is the greatest game in the series. However, to provide an even better experience within Pikmin 3, we highly suggest that you play Pikmin 2 first. Despite having a slightly lower overall score, Pikmin 2 provides a much more rounded experience with much more replayability. Of course, for the full story and experience, all 3 games should ideally be played in order. But for what it's worth, the first Pikmin game is more of a novelty than anything else, and no one would judge you too harshly for skipping over it. So with all of that said, we ask the question, what's so great about Pikmin? Beginning from creative roots in Pikmin 1, this franchise delivers a unique experience unlike anything seen before in the gaming world, and even within the real-time strategy genre. The games deliver an amazing experience for players of all ages, skill sets, and gaming backgrounds. The series established an experience that's rarely found on the GameCube and Wii U. A challenging and rewarding world that is both familiar and alien to our own, to run around and explore with quirky, adorable characters. Aesthetically, very few games can compare to the majesty that each individual Pikmin game delivers to the eyes and ears. The older 2 games have aged incredibly well, and the 3rd game simply revamps the visuals, bringing it into the modern gaming world. Though the games are not centralized on story or longevity of play, they deliver a strong, concise, enjoyable, challenging, and most importantly, fun adventure in one of Nintendo's most well-rounded franchises. That is what's so great about Pikmin. Thank you all for watching the first episode of What's So Great About Gaming. If there's any series of games that you would like us to cover, let us know, and we'll get right on that. Also, if you feel we didn't properly analyze something in the Pikmin series, or we left something out, tell us off, and we might cover it in a follow-up video. We understand that the scores of these 3 games ended up being very high, but we promise that won't always be the case. We just wanted to start this show with a truly great series to show what we're trying to do here. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.